Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests, and welcome to the Rotary Club of Toledo and the Toledo Lucas County Library. Now would be a great time for everyone to check into their social media. Make sure we turn down our ringers, but please keep your phones handy in case you hear something great that one of our presenters or our guest speaker today presents on, and you can share it with the community. At this time, I'd like to invite Keith Burwell and Nelson Schaefer to the podium. Keith will be giving our reflection, and Nelson will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Normally I would put a tie on for this great group, but I spilled my breakfast all over it this morning, so you got what you got. If you're not aware, and I know most of you are, yesterday was 9/11, today is 9/12, but reflection, Pew Research Center did a study on what do Americans think about 9/11 20 years after the fact. Sorting through the data, the Pew Research Center compiled that the attitudes toward that deadliest day in U.S. history is that it pulled people together. We were shaken badly in a spirit of sadness and patriotism. The public initially united and rallied against for wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, but that support waned. And now the threat, it said, to America is America itself at times. David Brooks, if you don't know, is the conservative writer for the New York Times, looked at this very attitude and concluded that we had lost in a world that we lived in with technology where we can connect to each other on the blink of an eye. We rarely look at each other in the eye. We don't take time to really see, know, trust, or believe in each other. And what can we do as human beings if we're not vulnerable enough to be alone? We always revert to our tribe. It's friend, enemy, us, them, build walls, hatred, and erect barriers. So as he says, my full-time job as economist is spend a lot of my time writing about America's problems, and a lot of problems I've covered since 2018 have had one similarity, and that was the tearing of our social fabric. Whether it's the rise of suicides, loneliness, depression, political polarization, people are angry at each other, not seeing one another. There's always a common link in the loss of community, a loss of connection. To counter this, David Brooks has started a new program called The Weave, the Social Fabric Project. As a reporter, he said, I started asking questions, and you come across these statistics. 54% of America say no one knows them well. The number of people who say they have no close friends has quadrupled. You see increasing isolation, including the rising of opioids. And so I began to realize the problem underlying all these is a degree of social distrust. So he has created Weave, calling on each of us to be weavers, to actively rebuild trust, rebuild communities every day, to make connections and do what we can to build that social fabric that we call trust. And building that trust is what we must do every day. Practice active friendship, which means inviting people in, being able to agree to disagree, but yet be community. With that said, the only way we can be weavers is that if we unify and agree that we are all committed and deeply to the dignity of each individual, which extends beyond just one day, and the social thing is a moral thing. It's the way we see yourself and see others in their deity, and ask yourself in your life, who am I, and how am I a good listener, and how can I connect, and how can we build community? And this begins with trust. So to me, our political polarization, David Brooks writes, which I cover in my daily job, flows out of social and psychological crisis. And the only people I see solving this psychological crisis are the weavers. I pray that each of us will turn this day to reach out to others beyond us and become weavers, that we can start to reweave a fabric of community and of trust, that we may look beyond the polarization and be one with each other. We ask these things in the Almighty's name. Amen.
As I was thinking about today's pledge, it occurred to me that today's pledge might be just a little bit more meaningful than normal, and that's because, as Keith said, yesterday was the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. So, to the flag, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Keith and Nelson. Keith, that was great for, filling in and doing that on such short notice. Appreciate it. As we begin our meeting, I'd like to thank Connect Toledo as our monthly meeting sponsor and thank our Rotarian, Cindy Kerr, and also the Development Corporation. So thank you, Cindy. Does anyone have any guests with them today? And if so, if you could bring them up to the floor, Mike, that would be great.
President Cindy, my fellow Rotarians, I'm excited to welcome back to Toledo a Perrysburg High School grad. Coach Barb Smith coached over 25 years of college basketball, most recently at Illinois State. She lives in Illinois, is in town visiting family, and her and I are working together on a project. She's founded a company called Find My Team, and she's got an event in October called Get in the Zone, where they're helping high school athletes take control of the recruitment process, specifically focused on female athletes because their transfer rate is like 2 to 1 on male athletes. So we're helping to kind of solve that one. So Barb is in town. I said, hey, come join us for lunch downtown at the library.
Can't be that eloquent. President Cindy, Mike Alfera with Huntington Bank, also a fellow board member along with Chuck Stacking and Kevin Burwell on Tutor Smart with myself. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome, Barb and Mike. Do we have any visiting Rotarians in the room? Nope. All righty. At this time, I'm excited to ask Adam Cassie to come up to the podium, and he's going to introduce a new program that the Environmental Services Committee is kicking off.
Fellow Rotarians, just a little bit of background. The Rotary in 2020 announced a 7th area of focus, and that was the environment. Out of that came the SRAG group, which some of you have heard about, the Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group. That was in 2020. We already knew that the environment was important, starting way back when the Water Committee was started. A little bit more information. It is a global problem that we're running into. That's why it is an international Rotary issue. A little bit of numbers for you. 250 million tons of trash is generated each year in the United States. 18.2 trillion pounds of plastic has been produced, and that is still out there in some form. And 63 million tons of food is sent to the landfill every year. It's about 40% of our food. Go to the Kroger, buy 3 bags of groceries, at least one of them is going straight to the garbage. Locally, our landfill is estimated to be about 25% paper products, about 13% plastic, and 17% food scraps. That's totaling 55%. That's nearly half of our landfill being filled with those 3 products. Talking a little bit more about plastic. Everybody's heard of plastic in our oceans, seen the large trash islands that are out there floating, know that it's an issue for all of our marine life, but it is every single body of water that is collecting plastic. Up in Lake Superior, you've got 7,000 particles of plastic per kilometer squared, but all the lakes flow from one to the other. By the time you get down to Lake Erie, you are looking at a large amount of plastic, 46,000 particles per square kilometer. Lake Ontario is even worse. If you fish in Lake Ontario, don't eat the fish. From there, it all just flows out into the ocean. as you eat seafood, you are consuming plastic. The estimate is about a credit card's worth of plastic every single week. It is not just our seafood, though. It is in our sea salt, our beer. There was actually a study done on the Great Lakes area, not Great Lakes Brewery specifically. And I was hoping that this would convince adults either to drink less or to litter less, but I don't know if either has happened. But look at tap water. 5,000 particles a year that you're consuming of plastic. And just to let you know, bottled water is even worse. They found that the friction of unscrewing the cap produces enough friction that plastic is falling into your water. As far as food waste goes, if it was its own country, it would be the third largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. It's filling our landfills, and if we did compost it, it would be a much better fertilizer than the chemical fertilizers that run right into our water every time it rains. I don't know if you all know where I'm going with all of this, but here in this room, since we've moved, we've been creating a lot of paper product waste, a lot of food waste, and a lot of plastic waste. So we've been working on a partnership between the library, which has been very supportive of this, the Rotary Club, Go Zero Composting, and then Keep Toledo Lucas County Beautiful. So starting next week, when you come in, things might look a little bit different. We will have all compostable products. There should be nothing in here that will belong in the garbage. It should all go right into composting. Yeah, it is exciting. We will have a recycling bin as well for all the plastic water bottles, so I don't know if we're getting rid of those just yet. But as far as if you walk in with anything in your pocket that's not compostable, I did buy a very small trash can for anything that does not belong in the compost. And this really should last us not a meeting, but maybe a full month before we fill this up. These meetings really should be zero waste starting next week. And appreciate everybody's hard work that's helped with this project. And I look forward to letting other Rotary clubs know that the Toledo Rotary is zero waste with their meetings.
Thank you, Adam, and thanks for all your hard work in getting this off the ground. I know it wasn't easy, but we're looking forward to next week and seeing how things work out. At this time, I'm really excited to congratulate all of the Rotarians that were nominated to the 20 under 40. These individuals do great work within our club, our community, and their professional lives, and they're the future leadership of our community. So if anybody is in the room that was nominated, could you please stand? Yeah. Good luck on the process, gentlemen. This evening, the Erie Situation documentary will be airing on PBS at 9 o'clock. This documentary was funded by the Toledo Rotary Foundation, and so you might want to, if you're not going to be home, set your DVR so that you can catch it. Some of you might have already caught it when it was at the Maumee Indoor Theater, but it's a great watch, so if you get a chance, do. Then speaking of the water crises, District 6820 in Mississippi is currently experiencing a major water system problem, which has resulted in a lack of drinking water. The National Guard has stepped in to assist them and our fellow Rotarians in Jackson, Mississippi. And if you would like to donate, reach out directly to the Disaster Relief Fund under the Rotary International. And now on to our guest speaker, Gary Corrigan. If you could please come up to the podium and introduce Marilynne Wood for us, that'd be great.
Thank you, President Cindy. And keeping with what I call a very strong environmental issue focus of what is keeping us from becoming healthy, productive citizens, I'd like to introduce Dr. Marilynne Wood. Marilynne is a pediatric educator. She's a clinician, a researcher, and a community activist. And she's going to share experiences she has had with screening and educating hundreds of families in the Toledo area. Now, she's worked with the city government to pass a lead ordinance issue to assure safe lead levels for housing families in Toledo. She has worked extensively with the University of Toledo's College of Nursing and and the students there to go out and measure the lead level in young people. She was a principal investigator of the elevated lead levels in children, and she's done a lot of research in that area and published it both locally and regionally. Maybe some of you have caught an editorial in The Blade several years back when Rotary picked lead levels as one of its transformational issues. She's earned her RN diploma at Mercy School of Nursing, a Bachelor of Science of Nursing at the University of Toledo, and a Master's of Science at the Medical College of Ohio, and a PhD from the University of Toledo. She's also received numerous awards for her work. So I'd like to have you welcome Dr. Marilynne Wood. Thank you.
Okay, turn off the mic. Oh, okay, I'll start at the podium. Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me. I would like to introduce a guest also, our dean at the College of Nursing at University of Toledo, Dean and our Dr. Linda Lewandowski. She has been so instrumental. Come on up here, Linda. She has been so supportive to me in all the work. She's been with us for 5 years. She's from University of Massachusetts Amherst, and we have been so fortunate having her as our dean. She not only is she interested in pediatric endeavors, also she's so involved in the community, and she really has supported myself and my students, made it so easy for me to take students and do this work. I could never do it without her, and also the students. I really love the manpower, and I have students that are still involved in Flint and things like that because of the lead issues. So thanks, Linda. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's so good to be with you today and be able to speak with all of you about the lead issue in Toledo. So the first slide. These are wonderful children. They are all different colors. We want them to grow up healthy in their and have a good experience in their schools and also in their home. Play, learn, wherever they're at, they need to be in a safe environment. And we're finding that Toledo is not that situation. We're finding that we're number 2 in the state as far as children with elevated lead. So in the children, it affects so many things. I know we always hear about lead in the paint. If it does affect their growth, behavior, ability to learn. It does decrease their IQ levels. And also they have some, if lead is high enough, they do have some symptoms like headaches and many ADHD behaviors where they're not able to pay attention, stay on track in school. The problem is that children learn to read kindergarten, first, second grade. By the time they get to third grade, we want them to read to learn, where they're doing math problems and things like that. And many children at this age is where we pick up that they may have an issue with elevated lead, where they're not keeping up with their peers, they get very frustrated. And what happens is they repeat. We've had 16-year-olds at Sherman School, a young African-American boy, 16 years old in 8th grade, could not pass to get on to high school. That affects his ability to participate in sports, his ability to keep up with his peers. And then what happens is when they get to be freshmen or sophomores in high school, it's just too much. They can't keep up. They're laughed at. They're kind of singled out, so they drop out. But they need to have a group, so many times they get involved with gangs or crime. Maybe you saw in The Blade, believe it was August 11th, that the murder was a victim of lead poisoning. And we find that some of these young men that pass away at this after an incident that they have lead levels of 53, 34, that type of thing. That they were exposed as a toddler, nothing was ever done, mom doesn't remember the number, nobody followed up, and this is their kind of their cycle of what happens to them. So, and we're trying to break that cycle. So another thing we're concerned about is pregnancy, because whatever the mom's lead level is, that's what the babies will be when the child is born. So back when, some of you probably remember Polly Fox Academy, who was run by a nurse, Joan Durgan, and she had a school nurse also. So we thought this is going to be a good place to screen girls. We screened 33, thinking that, oh my goodness, they're not eating right, they're not taking their vitamins, living in older apartment buildings and things like that. Out of the 33 girls we tested, only 2 were elevated. They were eating, keeping food on their stomach. Of course, it was cheesy Doritos and things like that. But they were taking their prenatal vitamins. They had 2 nurses looking after them, that they were getting prenatal care. So we did a comparison study at Scott High School with girls that were the same age and found that there was quite a high incidence there. So, we want to, the health department has done well on this as far as encouraging moms to get a lead level done when they're pregnant. Some of our private physicians aren't so good in that if I find out, Marilynne, what am I going to do? We have to follow up if the mom has an elevated level. So we're trying to encourage our OB and GYN to physicians to encourage them to get lead levels so that babies aren't born already with an elevated lead level. So, and the literature, well, first of all, they just dropped the level January of this year from 5 micrograms per deciliter to 3.5. So already all those hundreds and thousands of kids I've already screened with my students, they're already in now a group that's elevated because we're dropping this level. When we have an elevation, like at Leverett, we had several kids elevated, and we need to confirm it with a venous sample. We need to confirm to be sure that it is an elevated lead. And then the literature, the students and I have done lots of review of the literature, and even at 2 and 3 micrograms per deciliter, kids are having difficulty in school, ADHD behaviors, headaches, having difficult at home also. So that's another whole issue. Many children reach the age of 6 and were never screened. This was an issue back when I started about 14 years ago. Medicaid should pay for this, for a well-child checkup. Children should have a lead level, they should have a hemoglobin, and they should have their immunizations. What happens is these kids get missed, and a lot of, when I first started this, it's much better now, 14% of the children were screened, which is not good at all. So, but things are improving. So, and Toledo is really bad all over the place. The white area there is east of the Franklin Park Mall. So 43623 is pretty good, but the rest of them are bad news. 05 across the river is terrible. 09 is Walbridge, Escalibus, and then that whole area of 43610, 43608, 20, 24, and 4, kind of the downtown area. If you remember years ago with redlining, that is all happening. So that whole area, we see less educational opportunities, poverty, asthma, mold and mildew, lead. So it's an area that we've really concentrated on as far as testing children in those areas. But I've also been out to 43615, Kaiser, Elmhurst is 43613, and those areas are also affected. But these areas, when we talk about the different phases, those of you that have rental property, maybe you've heard this after the lead ordinance was passed, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, that area we're concentrating on because we know that's where I'm finding that many children have elevations, and many of the families rent too. That's 80 to 90% of our families rent. So we do have a problem. When we look at our statistics in school for TPS and we compare it to what it looks like in the state, we are in the bottom 50%. I'm sure this isn't a surprise. This has been out in the blade too. Our math and reading scores are at 32%, which is definitely in the bottom 50%. Our enrollment is close to 23,000. We have more minorities, African American, Latinos, and Asians than the state of Ohio together. All of our children, every school I go to, they get free breakfast, free lunch. They all qualify. In fact, Sherman, Glenwood, Robinwood, they're all at 99.9%. I mean, all these kids get free breakfast, free lunch. So, and then our diversity score for the Toledo area, 67%, as compared with the state of Ohio, which is at 47%. And the poverty rate is much less overall in the state of Ohio. Thank you. So the sources, we all know, we hear about paint. 1978 is when the legislation came down that gasoline, lead paint, 1978. So many of our homes were built before then. Many of our homes in Toledo were built before 1950 too. So, and right now I'm working with the Escuela Smart School in the South End. It's a bilingual school, part of TPS. And they talk to them about the more beautiful their dishes are, the more lead are in the dishes. And many times they cook in these dishes and they're not really safe for consumption, eating out of these things. So also toys, smoking. There's been a lot of research with smoking and lead in the home, and there is a correlation there that children are having higher lead levels with smoking parents or exposure to smoke. So. These are some of my cherished students. We were at Leverett. We have done many of these health fairs and in-school programs. We've done faith-based fairs in the summertime and the weekends, whenever we can get a chance to talk to students. Here's some. This was at Walbridge School, and you can see Recessa Annie on the floor. We were part of a health fair here, and we screened children at the health fair. These are golden opportunities because the parents are there, can talk to them how important it is that we know what the children's lead level is. And if it's elevated, we can talk to them about getting a venous sample. We've made home visits to many of these families and talked about, holes in the wall and things that we can do to make the home better. We use a lead care 2 analyzer. It's a CLIA waived point of care instrument. They are 99.9% accurate. In 3 minutes, I'm able to tell the parent, school nurse, what the lead level is of the child. If it is elevated, the student or I call the parents right away and let them know Johnny was 9.2. We need to have a venous sample. I send home all the results with the children, but we need to talk to the parent and let them know that they're elevated. So these little analyzers cost about $4,000 or $5,000. So I've been able to get some small grants to buy 2 of them. So, and as you can imagine, it's just like a glucose. We get a sample of blood, collected in a capillary tube, put it in a reagent, and put it on a test strip. The test strips cost about $12 a child. So that's where the expense is. So we've been able to get some donations. Mercy Healthcare has been phenomenal. And ProMedica, and even some of the schools where we go. ALAS is the Educational Latino Society for these bilingual students, and they are able to help us with test strips for their own school population. So that's been great. It is such a cost savings if we tackle this problem before it even happens. Prevention is the key. We're using children as markers. How do we know that Leverett's so bad? How do I know that area, well, back to the map, that area is so bad? Because we've tested kids, we've seen Leverett for one has the highest. I did a graph study, and the number of suspensions among their young African American girls and boys is just preposterous, and it correlates very well with their lead lead results. 73% of those kids that I tested a couple years ago were elevated. And then we have crime in that area in the north end. We have children that are not advancing well in school, dropping out of high school. So it's so important if we would do things at the front end and test the children, but better have them in safe environments. And would you go back to that other slide, Dominic? Thank you. Also, special ed. At Martin Luther King, when the students and I were there 3-4 years ago before COVID, their emotionally impaired classroom, and these are small classrooms. There's only like 10 or 12 kids where a lot of my children and my grandchildren teach, and their classes are 30 kids in there. Their behavioral classroom was like 10, 12 kids. Every child in the classroom was elevated with lead in Martin Luther King. And this was 3-4 years ago. And that's a school we'll eventually go back to. COVID, you can imagine how COVID slowed us down. I had so many students, wonderful graduate students from 24 volunteered to help me, not part of their clinical, they're not going to get any credit for it at all, not part of their clinical experience. And I had 153 parental consents signed at Escuela Smart, and then that was for April of 2020, and then we had COVID, so now we've started all over, but we're looking good. We're going to go back there in next month, the students and I. So, those type of classrooms, that's expensive. It's expensive teaching-wise. It's expensive for all the special services those children need. Wouldn't it be better to have them in a regular classroom with their peers? So, many children are labeled as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder too. They're on meds that they don't need to be if we could get their lead levels down. So thanks, Dominic. Okay. So there was great studies done in Detroit. Sometimes we call Detroit our sister city. Zhang, Baker. In fact, I was able to talk to a lot of these authors, and they found that the MEP scores, the Michigan Educational Assessment Proficiency Testing, it correlated well. Children that did not have any lead problem at all did very well on the tests. Those that had elevated lead levels did poorly on the test. What they did as a solution was create a working module where these children were individually instructed with a computerized program. They did well. They caught up and did very well, but eventually money ran out. So that was the end of the story, which is too bad because it was very expensive because it was such an individualized program. So, but there's other studies out there like that. So early educational issues, third grade, as I said, really marks the point where we should be reading to learn. And students who lack proficiency, and this is all really substantiated well in the literature, who lack proficiency in third grade are 4 times not likely to continue on and graduate from high school. And also, this leads to school dropouts and crime and incarceration, as I've talked about earlier. So, children with elevated blood levels may be 7 times as likely to drop out of school. Children that don't finish school, their peers are going to make at least a third more than they are. Some of them aren't even capable of wiping tables at Burger King or holding any kind of a job. So we want them to do well. We want them to be prosperous in their lifetime, have a family, and do the work that they enjoy doing and do a good job. Some of the things we do, and some of these kids, we had, I'll tell you about some success stories, but one of them I'll tell you about now. We had a little girl at Walbridge, 8 years old, who we tested 2 years prior, and she was 22.6 in a special classroom, special ed classroom. We followed her longitudinally, and at Trunk or Treat, that would have been 2019. We screened her again, and she was 6.1. Mom was not a nurse. She did all the things we told her. It's a good idea we visited her home and did a follow-up screenings with her. And vitamin C, iron, and calcium. If it's in the bloodstream, that's most helpful because the binding sites on the cells want to grab the lead, but instead, if we have good nutrition, they'll cling on to those good nutrients instead. Vitamins, we can get kids on vitamins. That's easy, they're inexpensive. It's so important that they get the foods they need. Avoiding an empty stomach. This is so important. We do a great job in preschool, kindergarten, first grade, maybe even second grade, with having them have snacks. So every couple hours they're eating because on an empty stomach, more lead is involved if it's available in the bloodstream. Frequent hand washing. We can't stress that enough with kids and parents. Damp mopping and cleaning. We've done some health fairs at the Family East Toledo Center, and our prizes and giveaways were buckets with spick and span, mops, sponges, things like that. So they'll do wet cleaning instead of just shoving the lead dust around. No smoking. And also an important thing is to assess for anemia. Many of these children are anemic. They're not getting enough hemoglobin in their blood, enough iron in their blood. So they're sluggish, they're tired, they're lethargic. They're not the active kids that we should see. So damp mop, dusting, leaving shoes at the door, washing hands, washing kids' face and hands frequently, washing pets' paws at the door before entering, keeping non-food items out of the children's mouth. That's really hard. They drop their pacifier, it's in this lead dust, and they stick it right back in, or toys. Some of the things, I can't say enough about prevention. We don't want this to happen at all. However, we have had some individual cases where things have really improved for some children. The 8-year-old girl I told you about at Walbridge, the 7 and 9-year-old, these were two little boys at Pickett School. Mom was addicted, Dad was incarcerated. Grandpa is 78 and he's raising these two kids. He did a heck of a job because they were elevated as toddlers and now they were not. The meter reads below 3.3 as an acceptable range. So that's where they were. They're doing very well in school. I just worry sometimes when I see these great grandparents raising small children. What's going to happen when Grandpa, if he makes it to his 80s, or who's going to be there for those kids? That's a real problem. So another one is Old West End. I love the Old West End. Well, one of our family nurse practitioner students lived in the Old West End, and she had a 1-year-old, and she heard what we were doing, and she said, I went to my pediatrician, and I told him I want my 1-year-old tested. No, you're a nurse. You know what you're doing. I'm not going to stick her again. No, I really want to know. You know where I live. I live in the Old West End. It's a beautiful house, but it was built way before 1950. So he tested, he listened to her, tested her. She had a lead level of 15. Then because she was a nurse, she did many of the things. Her husband worked with lead, so that he would come in, take a shower before he hugged the little girl. They had pets, so he wipe off of the paws because the pets are bringing in the soil around the house that could be have lead exposure. So she did all those things, and within 2 years, I think it went from 15 to 11 to 9 to 5. So, but it's still all the lead's not out, but at least the child will have a better opportunity in school and be able to keep up with their peers. And then I told you about Polyfox Academy. That's just, with a lot of support, they can do, children can do better, and parents are more aware of this problem. Prevention is the key. As I said before, we're using children as markers. How would I know where these zip codes are the worst if we didn't test them? We didn't screen these kids. So identifying the lead hazards before they're poisoned. I've been in some of these homes. They're even Section 8 homes. It's just mortifying. The basement windows are all duct taped together. The mom is cooking, which I always champion because they run out to McDonald's so often. I said, oh, it smells so good in here. And she had 3 boys, and I said, how's your water? And she said, well, I use this water for cooking, and I let it run, like you say, for a couple minutes before I use it for pasta and things. But upstairs bathroom, it's a greenish black water that comes out of the faucet. So this is what, and they don't want to make too much noise because they feel they're in a safe environment. They can afford where they're at. The kids are happy in school, that type of thing. So we need to be their advocates. Let's see what else we got there. The revised lead ordinance that was passed in August of 19 or 20. Yeah. So we've done pretty well with registering properties. We're at 3,000 to 4,000 that weren't registered at all. We've trained assessors to go into homes and do assessments. And we have quite a few that are, now they've moved that date from June of 2022 to December 1st of 2022. And Monica Smith is the lead coordinator at the city, and we've done quite a bit. Just keep upping those numbers. There is money available. I know people think it's just too much red tape, but the eligibility is based on who's living in the home, and usually their income is very low, that practically all the houses qualify, or rental properties qualify, and it's just getting that money and helping with painting, windows, that type of thing, to have a measurable lead assessment so we know that it's a safe place for children to live. Okay. And current practices, we don't adequately identify children. That's why they're having negative consequences, especially in school. And we don't want that to happen. So early intervention, we could do things to help them, like we saw in those examples, that really makes a difference in the child's life and improves their quality of living and also their ability to learn. So our goals: every child should be safe and to live where they live, play, and develop and learn. And we have led these children in school. When I go to Sherman or I go to Elmhurst or wherever, the school nurses are fabulous. That's why I've been able to expand, not only because of the College of Nursing, the support of Dean Lewandowski, and the students. It's because of the school nurses. I will go every month and speak with the school nurses, and everybody wants us to come because they know that there's certain kids that need to be screened, and that maybe they'd have elevated lead, maybe their life would turn around, they do better in school. So that has been the key. And I mean, some semesters I've had to turn schools away, and I said, I just can't do it this semester because there's so many that want us to come do education with the parents and also do screening with the children. So this last point to me, it is a transient group. Some of these kids have been in 50 different schools by the time they get to 3rd or 4th grade. So they're living in rental properties, and they're not even there a year. So if the child is exposed to lead, then that family moves out, another family moves in. So we're exposing the same child in the same house. That's why if we can get the home where it is lead free or lead safe, we want lead safe, then we're not exposing all these families. 0 to 6 is where we're most concerned. That's when the brain is developing. However, I'm concerned with kids 5 to 17 that have been tested, nothing done, never been tested, or somebody forgot what the lead level is. That's one thing. We're trying to empower parents. Find out what the lead level is so you know, so we can compare as the years go on. But so that's why backing it up and having safe rental homes, safe homes where they live, is imperative. So here's some more of my students. There's one doctoral student, two master's student, the one on the far end, she's in California working in an ER, and Jessica in the middle with this little guy was just our poster child. This was at Leverett, and she's working in a physician's office. She's an FNP, so we have so many children, or so many students to be so proud of. So. And this was, I don't know if you can see this real well, but this was at Birmingham. This little guy was tested. He was straight. This little guy is scared to death. So they are holding hands right there. And he successfully did it. You know, the parents sign the consent, but the child over 7, they can tell us, you know, I know my mom wants you to do this, but I don't want to do this. But usually we've never had anybody that we had, sometimes we have another student help or divert them, and we've never had any that we haven't been able to screen. So any questions? I really appreciate your kind interest and your inviting me. I mean, it's such an issue that something can be done about it, and that's the big thing. And we've seen that awareness over the years. I've seen it really improve, that more parents are aware when we go to schools, open houses, PTA meetings, church gatherings. Parents want their children tested. They want to know because they know what some of the harmful effects are of having lead poisoning. So, thank you.
Does anyone have any questions at this time?
Yes.
So once you identify a child that has high lead levels, is there a remedy that gets them back to the right, level of lead?
Yeah, we can't get all the lead out. If it's really high, like I talked to my friend Gloria Smith, she's the coordinator at the health department. We've had some toddlers at 52, 45. It's horrible. They will put them in the hospital and chelate them. It's an IV solution that binds with the lead, and it kind of excretes it through the urine. But some of these others are just from doing the right intervention, cleaning, vitamins, nutrition, that type of thing, that we've been able to see some of these children come way down. But we can never get the lead out. I mean, if it's there already, have lead in the system, it's always going to be an issue.
So catching it earlier, I guess, is an issue. But once you do that, I think it's, from what you've shared with us, the parents are often in the level of poverty that they don't have any stroke with their landlords. The chances of them doing the corrective action is a big issue. I wonder if you have a solution for that.
That's huge. We've already, with the season and with the ordinance, we've got quite a bit of pushback. Some are really, operating well, getting their homes registered, and also, they're getting their homes registered and having them inspected. It took me a long time with a lot of people at the city level to have a measurable amount of lead. There's like a lead gun you can put to a toy, a wall jamb, a window, or a door jamb, and you can tell the amount of lead. Because how are we going to know if they did anything after they painted or they say they painted or whatever, that, we have a measurable amount, but the big thing is safe housing. And during all of this, we talked, I think this was back with Mayor Bell. We collaborated with Rochester, New York. They had an issue too. I was telling Cindy this. And they put forth the ordinance, and everybody said, oh, people are just going to leave their homes. It's just going to be blight all over the place. Nobody's going to take care of their homes. The opposite happened. Everybody wanted to be on the good list. Everybody wanted to be able to rent their property. So in 4 years, they decreased their lead exposure in children and lead poisoning by 85%. So, I mean, it's doable. It's hard, but it's doable, and it's worth the effort. It's worth the effort. I mean, the crime in the city, maybe some of it's not due to lead, but I feel a lot of it is. That's how I got started. I was with a dean or a chair at criminal justice at University of Toledo. We were at an adolescent collaborative together, and he said, all these kids in juvie and youth detention center, could there be a link with lead? I said, absolutely. So that's how we got started in the charter schools, parochial schools, and now in TPS. So, it's huge. So, yes. Yeah. Okay. You mean in the school setting? Mm-hmm. Right, but there's still, yeah, because, right, but we have, if they have an elevated lead, then, it could have, their IQ could have been 10 to 12 points higher. They could have had a better experience in school. I think all of us that are older, you think of where we lived and the lead exposure. I mean, we're all probably just a little bit less than what we could be. So, but did that answer your question? I'm not sure if I did. Those of you that are younger don't have to worry. So, go ahead. If they're 0 to 6, they can be screened at the health department or your pediatrician. And sometimes pediatricians are excellent on doing it, but sometimes you have to push them a little bit and say, I really want to know what it is. I know, our house is newer, but I just want to know to be sure that he or she isn't lead exposed. Yeah, I would really because some pediatricians are excellent. They have a CLIA waived analyzer just like I do, so you would know right away. And some send it out with other blood work. But you should know. Another thing you should know is their hemoglobin. Children can be anemic, and we don't know that. So, but to get a lead level done, yeah, health department does it, but I would just have it done with other work at your pediatrician or PCP's office. Yeah, so yeah. Hi. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The deadlock that we have between the landlords and the city.
Right, right. Yeah, we're working on, and there is money available. In fact, I've got my cards right here that you can even call my cell number, and I can, because Monica Smith is who's handling that right now at the city level, and then Department of Neighborhoods is very involved with this also. Yeah, that because there is money available that isn't being used, and I think a lot of it, just red tape or forms to fill out and things like that. But sometimes in the past, it's so frustrating because in the past, we get all these millions of dollars and then we're sending half of it back because nobody utilized it. So,
I've been through this before. This is the second time the landlords have sued the city based on discrimination, and there's got to be a way to just come up with some kind of compromise so we can move forward. Everybody can live with what they have. May not necessarily be happy, but they can live with it.
right, right. And our board is myself from the University of Toledo, Juanita Green from First Church of God, George Thomas is our attorney counsel, and Sarah Jenkins is from Fair Housing, and Gloria Smith is from the Health Department. I think I got everybody. Oh, Abel's involved, and then United Way is also involved. But we also have, the coalition is well over 200 members, so we have a lot of backing and a lot of support in the area. So, any other questions? I did bring some of the things we've done to help with education. These are all done by my students and I. This is for pregnancy, but you want to make them colorful, easy to read. This one is just a bifold, clean well, eat right, wash often, and then all the numbers and what some of the symptoms are of a child that would have lead. And then ODH. They have, and a lot of this is available in Spanish too for my families. Keep your child safe. Pregnancy and lead and your baby. Your child had a blood level test. What to do next? And make your home a healthy home. So there's lots of available literature out there too for families. So thanks again. This has just been a wonderful opportunity. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wood, for joining us today. And on behalf of the Rotary, we'd like to provide you with this Historical Tales of Toledo. It was written by one of our very own Rotarians, Clint Mock. And we will be making a $25 donation to the Polio Plus Fund in your name.
Oh, thank you so
Thank you.
much. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you.
For the sake of time, I think we're going to skip Chuck's Chuckles today. So Chuck, if you can keep that on the back burner for next week, that would be great. Stop. Next week, we will be having District Judge Knapp here to talk to us about guns and drugs in the community and what the numbers show, and we'll be meeting here at the main library. Today, we have 4 committee meetings. Membership Committee will be meeting right here in the large classroom. If you can find a space in a far corner, that'd be great, because the Community Services Committee will also be meeting in this room, and so if we can have enough space between the two. Vocational Services will be meeting in the Community Room 10 here on the first floor, and Youth Services will be meeting in Community Room 11 right next door. And with that, we are adjourned.